President Andrew Clarkson to come up and lead us in our invocation.
If y'all will pray with me, please. Heavenly Father, we're thankful for this day that you have given us, for its blessings, its opportunities, its challenges. May we appreciate and use each day that comes to us. We pray for strength and guidance for each day as it comes, for each day's duties, for each day's problems. May we be challenged to give our best always, and may we be assured your presence with us. Amen.
All right, if you'll hold up your card buckets on the table, please give generously. I'd like to hear lots of change falling in those buckets. And I'm going to go ahead and ask Cynthia Giles to come up, and if you have a guest, if you will please stand, and Cynthia is going to come up and do fellowship for us.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're all well. Thank you for allowing me to be up here again for a second time in a month. It's nice. We did have a visiting Rotarian, Scott Stevens from the Greenville Rotary. Thank you for visiting us. And we did have a visitor, a Ford Ward, who is a visitor of Ann Walker. And we do not believe Ann Walker is here. So Ford, do you mind standing up?
Actually, Floyd Warren.
I'm
That's
so
okay.
sorry
That's
about
okay.
that.
That's okay. I'm a Rotarian from Sumter, Palmetto, and I was in the Camden Club, and I just started working in Columbia. So Ann told me to come visit you all and possibly join.
Welcome.
Right.
Welcome. Thank you.
Somebody come get the microphone.
I am Joe Jones, and I'm pleased to have my wife, Caroline Jones, a resident of Columbia originally, born here. She is a nurse and is especially interested in today's topic.
I'm Rusty DePass, and I have, again, as my guest, Bob Helms, who has been here before, but I just can't get him to sit with me. Thanks.
I am Jack Hupp, and it's my privilege to represent Jimmy Derrick in introducing a guest that he has, which is David Reniker, the commercial loan officer and vice president for Crestcom Bank. Where's Jimmy? Oh, there you go. Okay, this is your guest.
Any other guests? Thank you all for being here.
All right, thank you, Cindy. And I did want to, I know we've already said hello to Scott Stevens, but my friend Scott Stevens here is the president of the Greenville Rotary Club. And he has one more meeting left, I believe. And we went through PETS together. I had to go to his district to go to PETS when I was going through training. But Scott has been just a wonderful wealth of knowledge and support for me this year. So welcome. Really glad to have you here. Our good friend Louisa Campbell, who is going to follow Stephen as president of this club, she has worked with our scholarship committee for a number of years and is very passionate about this subject. So I'm going to ask her to come on up here, and we're going to have an update from our Columbia Rotary Scholarship.
Thank you, Carrie, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Louisa Campbell. And for the last several years, I've had the great pleasure of serving on the selection committee of our Columbia Rotary Club Scholars Committee, the program. And about a month ago at a wedding, I found one of our former scholars, and I begged him to please come speak to us today to give us an update on what he's doing. And after so many years of crying over the selections, because we have so many wonderful applicants, I can't tell you how happy it is for me to see how well one of our former scholars is doing. So please welcome to the podium, Wills Bryan.
Good afternoon. Will's Brian. I graduated from Heathwood in 2006, at which time I received the Columbia Rotary Scholarship, and from there I went on to study history and environmental science at UVA. Took a year or two off, then went to grad school here at University of South Carolina, where I got my master's in teaching, and I've just completed my 5th year of teaching in the education world. So I think I want to thank Ms. Campbell for asking me to be here, and then thank all of you for being a very critical part of my education. I think to put it in as specific a way as I can, that scholarship, I had to work through both undergrad and graduate school, but I think that scholarship allowed me to still have time to work on my studies. And I remember being very motivated in high school, but it wasn't until I got to UVA that I got to be interested in learning for the sake of learning, which certainly has progressed into following the career path that I follow now. I began my teaching career at Wilson Hall in Sumter, where I enjoyed 2 fantastic years as a science teacher there. But my true love and passion, it always had been, was history. So after a couple years there, I looked around and found a great school in the Atlanta area called the Walker School. Began there 3 years ago, and currently I teach high school early world history to freshmen, which is a job in and of itself. Recent world history to 10th graders, AP economics to 11th and 12th graders, and some very motivated 10th graders, really ones that have parents that insist that they're smart enough to take it in 10th grade, but they do a pretty good job. And then lastly, a personal finance course, which is new and not traditionally part of the academic routine in high school, so I'm enjoying that very much. Trying to send kids off fairly prepared to make good financial decisions in their young adult life. I also coach varsity football. I'm in the middle of summer practice right now. That's kind of a year-round job almost. And then I also coach the varsity girls lacrosse team in the spring. That has been by far the hardest aspect of my job since beginning teaching. So not having a sister and then walking right into that, but I've learned a lot, and we've done a really good job and moved the program forward. So I just want to bring it all home and say that the scholarship that I received through this club really inspired me to be a learner for the sake of learning, which I'm every day waking up hopefully and passionately carrying on to the next generation, which I'll tell you, I mean, they have their issues. I think you've picked up a newspaper article or you've seen on the TV, what their issues are. But I want to say firsthand, I think they're phenomenal kids, and I'm really enjoying teaching them. I think they're smart. I think they're going to find a way to solve and confront a lot of the world's most difficult problems. But hopefully I can continue to be a part of that transformation. But I think the generation that's coming up is different than my generation. It's definitely different than the ones in front of me, but they are very smart and very capable. So I'm privileged to be a part of their transformation and their growth, and I owe that in large part to what I got from this club. So I want to say thank you very much, and would love to answer any questions after the meeting if you all are interested in particulars, and then also say thank you on behalf of my brother, who's a year younger, who received the scholarship 1 year later than I did. He is just graduating from residency in Greenwood at Self Regional in 2 weeks, so he'll be staying in Greenwood. That was kind of an alarming piece of news with his new wife for a year to do a sports medicine rotation, but he's been very successful as well. So we're both products of following our hearts and doing things that we want to wake up and get after every single day. So the root of that, I think, as a teacher, is definitely a strong education, which would not have been possible without certain benefactors and helpers. So thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. So.
So Wills, I have a freshman boy. He's 15.
Good luck.
And before I came here today, I had to drop him off at lacrosse camp at USC. So he acts like he's been taken by aliens sometimes. But yeah, I do agree with you. I think that this upcoming generation, they're very smart and they're going to do great things. So appreciate you and all you do to guide them along. We're glad to have you here. All right, Bob Borum, Health and Happiness.
Sad to report that Glenn Ward's father died this past Thursday. The family will receive friends today, 6 to 8 at Shive's Funeral Home on the Trenholm Road Extension. The service will be Tuesday, 3 p.m. at Redemption Church, Platt Springs Road. And the family will receive friends immediately after the service. And so to Glenn and all of his family, we extend our prayers and our sympathy. Well, how about happiness? Andrew's happy. He just told me that his company, Communication Management, has been acquired by Amtech Electrical of Lexington, Kentucky. And he's very happy about that. So let's give him a hand. No retirement, he said, somewhere in the future, I guess, when you get old enough. Well, yesterday was, good grief, yesterday was, yeah, I remembered my own father very much yesterday, a decorated Army officer in World War II, and thought about the lessons that he taught me by word and by example. I hope each of you had a good Father's Day, but that said, Father's Day is not like Mother's Day. Florists prefer Mother's Day to Father's Day. For example, how many of you men got a bouquet of flowers yesterday? And how many of you got a box of chocolates? And how many of you got breakfast in bed? And when you compare Father's Day to Mother's Day, which one is the winner? Obviously, Mother's Day. And I've been beginning to wonder, why is that? And I think it all starts when we were very young. Here's what I mean. When you were young, did you ever hear this? What are little girls made of? Sugar and spice and what are little boys made of? Snakes and snails and puppy dog tails. Now who comes out the winner in that? Because you see, we're kind of trained in that when we're very young. And then when we get older, there is a song which became very popular, and I want you to fill in the blank for me. Blank are a girl's best friend. You know that, don't you? Blank are a girl's, say it again, diamonds. Now how about this? A man's best friend is a dog. I think you see what I mean. Now who comes out the winner in that thing? And that's one of the reasons, you see?
The man with the dog.
And even the language, you take the language that we use, you listen for the negative connotations for just the word man. Manslaughter. Manhandle. Manipulate. Manure. You know, Well, so much for all that. I think Father's Day is a pretty good day anyhow, and I hope that you agree. There was this guy who lived in a nice house. He was single, he had no children. But even though he had no children of his own, he was always talking about children, talking about how much he loved children. He just loved children, he would say, and anybody who would listen to him, he'd say, oh, just love children, you know, children. They're just sweet little things, love those children. Just look at children, they're so cute, they're so adorable. I just love children, I just love children. So one day, he was having his driveway repaired, and they tore out the old driveway, and the trucks came, they poured in a new driveway, and the workmen smoothed out the surface till it was just glassy. And not long after the trucks left, this guy looked out the window of his house, and he saw out there in his new driveway some little boys with sticks writing their names and a whole lot of other stuff in his freshly poured new driveway. And he dashed out the door in an absolute rage, yelling and screaming and cursing. You miserable little demons, you delinquents, you trashy delinquents, you horrible, worthless creatures. And he carried a stick and he ran them off. And as the kids were running off, a neighbor came over and said to the guy, said, I thought you loved children. And he said, you ready for this? I love them in the abstract, but not in the concrete. And what's the purpose of all this? See, every week we come here and we look at the four-way test. All that it means, this banner with the words of the four-way test. And do we love the four-way test just in the abstract? Or do we love it in the concrete? Do we love it in its concrete expression in the lives of every one of us? All of this in a concrete expression in our relationships, in our business, in our politics. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Always a pleasure when you do health and happiness. Here's some food for thought. Hal Stevenson, stop looking at your phone. Nothing rhymes with woman, right? Can anybody think of a word that rhymes with woman? Woman. Okay. Summon. But I don't know how you would use those together. All right. We're going to go ahead with our speaker, and I'm going to ask President-elect Stephen Creech to come up here and introduce him.
Thank you, President Carey. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm happy to introduce our speaker today. He's a friend of mine I've gotten to know. We have a few things in common, both from Sumter. Our speaker today is Dr. John Ropp. Dr. Ropp is chairman of the South Carolina Medical Association. He is board certified in family medicine with a certificate of added qualification in hospice and palliative medicine, and is a practicing physician with Palmetto Family Medicine and Senior Care in Hartsville, South Carolina. After graduating from the Citadel, Dr. Ropp attended the University of South Carolina School of Medicine and completed his residency at McLeod Family Medicine in Florence. Dr. Ropp is also chairman of the South Carolina Coalition for the Care of the Seriously Ill, which aims to give an active voice to patients and their families through advanced care planning and other initiatives. He first became involved in the areas of palliative medicine and end-of-life care while serving on the SCMA's Bioethics Committee. At the time, his own medical practice was transitioning away from hospital medicine, and the idea of having his patients' wishes honored weighed heavily on him. Dr. Ropp cites the evolution of the hospitalist and hospital-based medical practice model as one of the most pivotal changes in primary care. Without the continuity of having the same doctor in and out of the hospital makes it challenging to communicate a patient's care plans. And as a result of these changes in medical practice, Dr. Rock focuses most of his consultant work in the area of advanced care planning projects. He serves as medical advisor on a new statewide effort to improve end-of-life care in South Carolina. He's going to tell you a little bit more about that today. Dr. Rock was a member of the Hartsville Rotary Club, and he served as club president there from 2011 to 2012. He married his high school sweetheart from Sumter High School, Go Gamecocks, his wife Caroline, and they have 5 children together: Elizabeth, Johnny, David, Mary Grace, and Sarah Catherine. Please join me in a warm Columbia Rotary Club welcome for Dr. John Rock.
Stephen's got some advantages over me, literally. First of all, I want to thank this club for singing the national anthem. That's delightful. I know at the Hartsville Rotary Club, we do stand and have the invocation, and then we give the pledge. If you visit our club over at the Hartsville Country Club, you probably won't want to hear a whole lot of the singers who are gathered that day, but y'all are great. That's to be commended. It's not too often that we get to sing in public much anymore. Now some of us were at church yesterday here on Father's Day, might be singing in that arena, but just at the publicly, plus everything else in the world going on, I think it's a refreshing change. So thank you very much to this club. The Hartsville Club, I was talking to Stephen a little while ago, saying, do y'all have any civic club rivalries and those sorts of things? And as large as your club is, the Hartsville Club is about 70 members. I think y'all are around 250 or that range, which is just a great size to be able to accomplish lots of things. But in Hartsville, the rivalry is between the Hartsville Rotary Club, not another Rotary Club, but the Kiwanis. And so we always had this going back and forth. This is a very healthy rivalry. But one of my Rotary stories is whenever my club president year, and Carrie, by the way, congratulations, 2 more meetings. Yeah, there is a lot going through your head. 3, so Stephen, get ready to step up, brother. It's actually one of the best years of your life. And so the club members make it that way. But whenever I was club president a few years ago, we had the honor of hosting the Joint Civic Club in Hartsville. So the Joint Civic Club meets at the Country Club once a year, and it brings together all the other civic clubs. You have the Civitans, the Lions Club, the Pilot Club, and of course the Kiwanis. And so the Kiwanis is a pretty sizable club in Hartsville too, and so we got together and said, listen, we got to do something that's really going to be outstanding. We need a great speaker. We got to be able to introduce him well. It just happened to be my club president year, so it was my opportunity to sit at the head table. And the guest speaker that year was Mr. Harris DeLoach from Sunoco. Some of y'all know Harris, and that's the way he likes to be called, by the way. He wants to be called Harris. And so when Mr. DeLoach, Harris, sat up there with me, I said, Harris, all these people know you. You've been in Hartsville forever. You've done this, that, and the other. You go through the list of things. At the time, he was president and CEO of Sunoco still, and he had a major announcement to make. And so it was his desire to make it at the Civic Club, Joint Club. So we're thrilled to have him. So I was sitting there with the Kiwanis and taking our natural ribbings and those sorts of things. I said, now how am I going to be able to upstage the Kiwanis in this thing? Because they actually had more attendance than we did at that Joint Civic Club meeting. So I'm sitting there with Harris, and he's got this list of all these things. I had done my homework, I did my diligence, I called the Sunoco marketing department. I said, give me the information that I need because I really want this thing to go well. I want to be able to present Harris in a great picture, maybe give him something that no one else knew about. Well, everybody knew the guy. Now here I'm a new blood to Hartsville, and by the way, if you haven't been born or bred in Hartsville, you're never from Hartsville. I'm from Sumter, right? Okay, and people know that. In fact, some people still think I live in Sumter and travel to Hartsville every day to go to work. So no, if you haven't been in Hartsville 40 or 45 years, you're nothing. So here I am, I've been in Hartsville about for 8 or 9 years. There's nothing new that I'm going to be able to share with these people. There's no way that I'm going to be able to, in a public setting, get the one over on my Kiwanis brothers and sisters. So I said, Harris, is there anything you can tell me that your department wouldn't share? So he leaned in and gave me a piece of information. That's all I needed. So I stood up, we did the invocation, we did the pledge, and it was my privilege to introduce a past president of the Hartsville Rotary Club, Mr. Harris DeLoach. It won the day. That's all I had to say, so Rotarians are going to be thankful, but most be thankful you're not a Kiwanis in Hartsville, South Carolina. Okay, they've got nothing on you. The Rotary clubs. Again, thank you for the kind invitation, Stephen. I've gotten to know you over the years through the Advanced Care Planning initiatives, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Some of this information may seem real dry, because let me ask you this: how many of y'all have financial planners? How many of y'all either have one now, have met one in the past? Yeah, so the great majority of the room. Okay, how many of y'all have advanced care planners? 3 or 4. Okay, that's usually more than most rooms that I go into. And all of us should be raising our hands. Why? Because you are an advanced care planner, whether you know it or not. It's kind of like a pastor told me a longer time ago. It's not whether you're a theologian or not, it's whether you're a good one or a bad one. Okay? We are all advanced care planning. Who are we advanced care planning for? What's the answer? Ourselves. Yourself. Okay? No one else can do that for you. You may not know a thing about stocks and bonds, or the latest companies being taken over or bought out. That's okay. We all need help in those areas. We need a little bit of help in advanced care planning too, but only you have the ability to actually put that plan down and document it well. And so that's one of my passions. Stephen has mentioned one of the things that's been life-changing in my practice has been the evolution of the hospitalist movement. When I graduated from the University of South Carolina School of Medicine here in Columbia back in 2001, I think there was only one practice, primary care practice, still doing hospital work, and I think that was over across the river in Lexington. So whenever I moved to Hartsville, all of us still did a lot of hospital medicine, and I loved it. Got real good at it, was doing ICU, intubations, just a lot of crazy stuff for a primary care doctor to do, but I loved it. Did a lot of moonlighting and all that. So a lot of that has changed as well. So over the last 7 or 8 years, though, in Hartsville now, you may have 1 or 2 primary care doctors who still go in the hospital, but the rest are the hospitalists. And they do a great job, and we're thankful for them. But it has changed the way that we practice medicine. It's changed the way that patients experience medicine. And it's changed a lot of the patient honoring wishes and preferences that has gone on over a long period of time. We good? All right. Okay. Good. So what is advanced care planning? These are a couple definitions, and I encourage any questions. I think we're doing pretty good on time, so if anybody wants to raise hands, hopefully there'll be some time near the end. But even if something strikes you in the middle, please don't hesitate to stop me. So what is advanced care planning? It's a process. Okay, it's a process of planning your health care preferences in advanced or serious illness or other events. Some of you have already had this experience yourself. Perhaps you've had it with family members or others. It's focused most intensely near the end of life, when the time comes whenever you can't make decisions for yourself. Now, it could happen real quick. We could come out here in Rosewood, and in 2 seconds, wish that, family members are going to wish that we had a good advanced care plan, right? It can literally happen that quick. And it's also about clearly communicating and documenting your decisions to have an advanced care plan. And we'll talk about some of the nuts and bolts of that in the next few minutes. Often these result in advanced directives. How many folks, by the way, know how many advanced directives are authorized in the state of South Carolina? Anybody know? Yes? Yeah?
We have the 5 wishes document. We have a living will called a declaration of a desire for a natural death. And we have a healthcare power of attorney. Those are the only ones I know about.
You get a gold star. Congratulations. Yeah, there are 3. And you actually named the one that's least known first, which is interesting. So you have the living will. Most of y'all are familiar, at least with that language. The healthcare power of attorney. And then the 5 wishes, which is a nice way of kind of introducing the concept. And we'll talk about maybe, if we have time, some of the challenges of the advanced directives that we have in our state. But there are also medical orders that can be given, and those are emerging as maybe even a better source of advanced care planning. So next slide, please. Yeah, so why did I get involved with this? So I want to introduce a few folks to you. This is my immediate family with my wife, Caroline, and then our 5 children that Stephen mentioned just a little while ago. Incidentally, my daughter, Elizabeth, the oldest girl there in the picture, graduated from Hartsville High School a week ago. So she is moving on. I don't know if there are any Walford grads in the crowd, but she'll be heading to Spartanburg here in the next, that breaks the heart of a Citadel Bulldog. I want you to tell you, we have Bulldogs in Charleston and Terriers in Walford, Spartanburg. It just sounds, I don't know, it's a higher level dog. Anyway, so I have the children with me, but the ones I want to focus on are the 2 people in front. Those are my grandparents, Rob. The Rock men don't have a real creative way of naming ourselves, so that's John Sr. My dad's not in the picture, he's Junior, I'm the third, and the fourth is in the picture. All right, he's the tall one. So, but the man in front is John C. Rock Sr. He is, you might notice, for some of you who have a real keen eye, he's got a Block C Gamecock on his left lapel area. So we're sitting literally between his two greatest loves. One is Williams-Brice Stadium, and the other one is Arsenal Hill Presbyterian Church, because that's where he met the woman to his right many, many years ago when he was a DJ at WNOK Radio. That's the story of Columbia in our lives. It weaves constantly. So that man, after being a DJ and not feeling the call to continue that, he went to seminary and became a Presbyterian preacher. But what got me interested was, this is the last Thanksgiving dinner that we had together. Because not a year later, my grandfather passed away up in Rayford, North Carolina, near Fayetteville. And it was, as far as ends go, something that was heartbreaking to us all. But it was also not so hard as it could have been. Not so hard as what we have seen in my practice, even with patients who struggle with their families, with decision making, with not having a plan in place, and being out of state. You know, they look through a family doctor, and the family kind of saying, well, should we do this, that, or the other? It made it very helpful for me professionally not to have to always constantly be going and rehashing the plan over and over and over again. His wishes were well known, and he did not suffer at the time when the Lord called him home. Next slide, please. So what do patients and families want? Well, a lot of this goes by the 80-20 rule. This has been studied across the United States, even internationally, and generally it breaks down to the 80-20. And 80% want to talk with their physicians and other caregivers about serious illness. But it's less than 20 a year. Only 7% have had end-of-life conversations with their physicians. 88% want to die at home. Only 20% do. 82% say it's important to put wishes in writing. Only 23% have done so. And 56% have not spoken with family about any of their wishes. I hope you have. And if there's anything that comes out of this conversation today, I hope you're able to take that as a piece of nugget, maybe a gold nugget to take home with you. Next slide, before you advance it. So, remember who recognizes this motto? Does anybody remember that? What company? Yeah, Ford Motor Company, right? They got a new one out the last few years. I think it's built Ford Tough. Okay, had to beef it up a little bit. You know, quality is job one. Or number two. Click. Yeah. So is this quality? You see what that is?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So what we're seeing here is, can that get the job done? Sure, it can get the job done. I mean, you use it, you do it, you get out of there, right? Okay, it's functional. Well, a lot of what we do in medicine is very functional, but we wouldn't say it's quality. And that's one thing in advanced care planning that we have not done very quality at all. In fact, we may be harming people in the process. Next slide. So what's the ACP problem in South Carolina? Well, you just click through this, as I say, lack of advanced care planning, and we call it ACP for short. You know, we are medicine people, so we have to have our mnemonics. So lack of ACP conversation in medical settings. How many of y'all have discussed with a nurse, doctor, nurse practitioner, physician assistant, any end-of-life care conversations about yourself? Yeah, it's just not something that's really built into the fabric of taking care of people in the clinical settings. There's lots of reasons for it. I mean, I'm trained in family medicine. There's a lot of running in, running out, getting through the day. I'm dealing with a number of issues and more every day, just like a lot of professions having to deal with more and more requirements. But that's not an excuse. How about inconsistent documentation of these preferences in healthcare settings? How many of y'all have been into the hospital in the last year or two? You go in there, and one of the mandatory questions they ask you now is, do you have what? Yeah, a lot of times they'll use living will directly, because that's the most common. It kind of rolls off the tongue even. Everybody's maybe read or knew something of it. Do you have an advance directive, perhaps, or living will? And what did they do with that information? How far did they take it from there? Not very far. My experience has been the same. It's usually a check mark to make sure the question got asked. Why do they have to ask you that question? Say again? Yeah, it is. It does go back to payment probably because it's the law. They have to ask you that question. Now, are there any requirements that they have to do with it after they ask you? Not that I know of. But that question does have to be asked in order for them to be compliant with certainly Medicare and probably other HIPAA guidelines. So that's come about in the last number of years as your experience bears out. Next one, poor communication of documented preferences among healthcare providers. There are myriad electronic health systems out there, from hospitals, and I think the downtown Columbia hospitals use a different system than Lexington does. I may be wrong, but I think that's the case. I mean, how many patients interact between those two health systems every single day? Happens all the time. Not to mention the number of practices, independent or employed or hospital owned, that run different systems. These things don't communicate. I mean, the interoperability challenges is tremendous. It's been well documented in the technology literature. So that's just one example. Next one. And then finally, one of the problems in our state is poor healthcare quality of care. We talked a little bit about that already. But in this other statement, and threat of patient safety concerns. Now, the hospitals have been very on top of this for a decade or more now. Patient safety. How is the lack of having good communication with advanced care planning a patient safety issue? Well, when you think of patient safety, if you go into an operating room, you expect them to operate on the right leg or the left, the correct leg, right? So that's what we're talking about here. Is the harm in ACP potentially that serious if they were to operate on the wrong place? Or leave something in you whenever they close up the operation? I would say yes, it is. There's a potential for that. If you have documented well that you don't want certain things done to you, chest compressions, electric shock, intubations, and those things actually get performed, that's a terrible misjudgment by the medical community of what that patient's wishes are whenever they need it the most. So this is a patient safety issue, certainly. Next slide, please. So some patient care and family scenarios. Some of these may be familiar to you. It's not by any chance trying to get totally exhaustive with this subject, but see if these don't hit home to you as they do me and patients in my practice. Disagreement among family members about what mom or dad would want done. I do live in Hartsville. Been practicing there almost 15 years now. Before that was in Florence, and then before that here in Columbia. In all of those settings, whenever a patient was near the end of life and had an event happen, maybe a heart attack, maybe a stroke, congestive heart failure came on again, maybe emphysema attack, COPD, and countless times you'd have a patient taken care of immediately, and then once you got him in the hospital, really the conversations revved up, but then you started having people coming in, one after the other, and those are just the locals. You've always got that family member in New Jersey. You've been there. Yeah, you're laughing. You've seen this. You're a nurse, aren't you? Yeah. California, New Jersey and California are very different than South Carolina. So you have at least 3 differences of opinion flying in or swooping in at the last moment. Now this is extremely difficult. It's probably the most challenging things in medicine. Not just challenging, but heartbreaking, is whenever you see that. Second one, transfer of living settings in last months of years of life. Let me explain that. That's a little challenge in the language there. Probably not a very clear statement by me. But if you've had a broken hip, it's not uncommon to get transferred by EMS perhaps, or some other mode, to the emergency room, get the surgery done, then go where? Rehab. Right. So there's a couple of transfers that have already occurred, from home to hospital to rehab. Occasionally, with an older person, they'll go from rehab where? To nursing home for a period of time. Maybe not forever, but until they had an extended stay, and then maybe go back home, or maybe transition where? To a hospice, if it's an end-of-life situation, or assisted living, Okay, so there's a lot of different, I mean, there's 7 or 8 right there, transitions. What about these communications? How do we get this consistent across these care settings? Because all it takes is one event to occur for that harm to happen. So that these are challenging things. Many of y'all have been there with your families, and perhaps even yourself. Next one. How about misplaced or outdated advanced care planning documents? We've already mentioned the advanced care or the advanced directives themselves. There are also medical orders that can be transferred. Many states have those already. We're working toward those in South Carolina now. But if they haven't been reviewed, I mean, your financial planner says you need to review those documents periodically, regularly. You know, major event happens in your life. You need to come back and sit with me, or let's make this change the plan. Same thing in advanced care planning. When your situation has changed. And by the way, how many folks need a health care power of attorney? You ever thought about that? What's the percent? An adult. Let's just talk. Let's leave the conversation to adults right now. 100%. No question. Okay? There's no question. And I will say, fine lady in the back mentioned the 3 advanced directives. Personally, and actually there's some friends at the South Carolina Bar who agree with me with this, which is rare for docs and lawyers to agree on much of anything. We'd like to see the living will go away. 5 wishes is a nice conversation starter, but I can't think it's ever been used clinically in practice. Now that healthcare power of attorney, y'all, that's used every single day. You think about the practical implications of that. You have a living will packet almost that there's never the scenario that fits that living will just perfectly. So if you folks have a living will, it's okay. It's a good place to maybe have a conversation. But that healthcare power of attorney is the one to go with. We'd like to see it boil down really to that. And there's even opportunities within the healthcare power of attorney to document some special cases or special circumstances that you'd like to take care of. Next one. Patient preferences are not honored when health declines. We've had cases even in our hospital where a family member says, you know, I thought mom or dad didn't, in most cases, didn't want this done. Why were they transferred in the first place? You know, they wanted to, you just saw the numbers, 80-20. They wanted to die at home. Why were they transferred in the first place? Well, you know, our EMS folks in the state do a very, very good job. When they show up on the scene, they are well trained to do exactly like they're trained, and also as they're directly ordered by their medical advisors. And they're going to transfer people if the form's not present, if it's not available, if there's uncertainty and all that. They will transfer. Not just will they not only transfer, but they'll begin to act immediately. And that leads to all those other things I said before, CPR, other things that happen in the field to help keep that patient alive. Next slide, please. So what are we doing to address the AC problem, even in South Carolina? Well, we want to encourage healthcare providers to use current tools. I do a lot of work with our South Carolina Medical Association. This is a kind of a hot topic now, that there are a number of tools out there from an education standpoint that have helped us, that promote ACP conversations. Within the last couple of years, we've had a pilot program in 4 locations across the state. It was interesting seeing the different practices, how the workflow, and you can imagine even in your own business, if you introduce a new idea, it takes a while to think through how that's going to affect each person along that workflow chain. Same thing in medical practices. It's also hard to introduce certain things that kind of are going to take more time in many cases. But there are a number of things that can help us there. The other one is encourage payers and insurers to follow Medicare's lead in paying for these conversations. Money's a great motivator, right? We all know that. You have to have revenue in order to do what you do. Well, Medicare understood that, and so in 2016, they actually started paying for advanced care planning conversations. Mostly these are done in primary care offices. They may be done in other places too. But I would encourage you, if you've not been told that before, or maybe you're a physician or your practice that you go to, just ask them if that's available. Because Medicare is paying for it and has for the last couple of years. Other payers are kind of sitting back like they sometimes want to do and look what the evidence is showing. And that's understandable to some degree. But it's been mighty helpful for us to in our practice and other practices, to be able to at least know that Medicare has acknowledged that, and that you do have some reimbursement in order to do the work that you're doing already in most cases. And then you see the third thing, there's the care of the seriously ill. This is a coalition that started in 2010. It's hosted by the Medical Association. We have meetings every other month. It's a combination of many statewide organizations, the South Carolina Hospital Association, the South Carolina Bar, the Carolina Center for Hospice and End-of-Life Care, chaplains, nurses associations, individuals, the AARP, just a number of consumer groups too. So it's been a really good group of folks to get together to try to start tackling some of these issues. And earlier this year, or late in 2017, the Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina Foundation has agreed to fund a comprehensive ACP plan to kind of roll out some of these ideas. In most cases, I think a lot of this work is done in pockets. For instance, where is the living will mostly done? Yeah, lawyer's office, isn't it? And even my lawyer friends, they'll come and say, John, look, we fill these things out because we're told to, and this is part of estate planning and those sorts of things. But we really feel inadequate to address these living wills, and they should feel inadequate. In most cases, they're doing something and talking about things that they really don't have any idea what it's like. Now, the flip side of medicine is, too, a lot of times we don't want to be guilty of recommending legal help whenever it's not appropriate. But clinically, you're going to need physicians, nurses, PAs, our nurse practitioner friends involved in this. And so we're starting to do that, and I think the foundation, the Blue Cross Blue Shield Foundation recognizes that. So we have some neat opportunities in the years to come. I did put in the parentheses there, including documentation of technology solutions. That sounds kind of techy and a little vague. What that is how many of y'all realize that now in South Carolina there is a database for all medications that can be searched? Yeah, I don't know if y'all are pharmacists or care clinicians, but yeah, it's called the Prescription Monitoring Program. SCRIPS is the South Carolina version of that. Many states have it, and it's part of the solution to the opioid crisis that maybe you've had a discussion about here. I don't know. But what it is it requires us to check folks who are on certain medications within a certain period of time. And it's at most every 90 days if they're taking medicines every day. You have to check that thing every 90 days in order to continue. So we have precedent already for a statewide database. Wouldn't it be neat if there was a statewide database for advanced care planning documents such as the healthcare power of attorney and a few other ones out there related to medical orders? That can be searched by EMS en route. That can be searched by the emergency room physician, by the hospitalist. That can be entered by the primary care physician. The technology is there now. It's just a matter of putting the right people together and the pieces. And so we hope that through this Blue Cross Foundation grant, we can begin moving in that direction. Next slide. Yep, thank you. And we can click on. So what can you do? I've already probably made this clear enough. If you can complete a healthcare power of attorney, I think it's probably the best thing you can do. So if you haven't done that already, I would encourage you to call up whoever houses your estate documents or other things. The interesting thing about the healthcare power of attorney, you don't have to have an attorney to do it. It's something that you can print off. Just make sure that it gets in the right hands clinically, and that the people that love you the most have a copy of it as well. Because it does name somebody in your place. And this is truly the legally authorized representative that the lawyers talk about. And this person would stand in your place if you can't make medical decisions for yourself. If you're injured, if you have a brain injury, can't make a medical decision, that healthcare power of attorney is the one who will speak for you. Second one is discuss with your family and medical professionals your preferences if and when you are incapacitated. Yeah, so talk to your family first, and then talk to your clinicians. It's not unusual now that we started doing this in our practice for patients to bring in a healthcare power of attorney, or to say, what do I need to do it? And then they'll bring it in, and we'll enter it into the electronic medical record, which has been a nice change. Next one.
Where can you get that form?
The Lieutenant Governor's Office of Aging has a very nice website, And that's usually the best place to get a lot of these advanced directives and information, including the healthcare power. Make copies of it. I have a nurse friend who does a lot of education for the group that we work with, who keeps a copy in her glove box in the car, in each of their cars. She also keeps one in the normal places around the house. It's interesting, EMS prefers the forms on the refrigerator and also at the head of the bed for the patient who is not as mobile. So there are some places that people can keep those. And if things are, for healthcare power, for instance, for me, my wife, I think would go crazy if I put the healthcare power above our bed. If I put it on my refrigerator, it'd be destroyed in about 5 minutes from the kids going in and out of the fridge. So, be reasonable, but put it in those places that are important. I think that the glove box of the car is a pretty good one. And then engage elected officials and insurers when advanced care planning is appropriate, has bills and rules that are proposed. For example, one of those is in parenthesis there. It's the Post in South Carolina bill that was sponsored last year. It did not pass. It had some co-sponsors. The South Carolina Bar had 1 or 2 little issues that we've got to work through during this summer, but we'll hopefully reintroduce it coming up here in January. So whenever you hear about things like this that are appropriate, do some digging, ask some questions and those sorts of things. If they're appropriate, make a phone call to whoever your representative or your senator is and say, look, I've learned a little bit about this. It's important to me. I've had this experience with my family. It makes a lot of difference. Just that one phone call, and then support those folks as much as we can. And then I will probably not cover. I may go back to this one. Just leave it for a second, I guess. These are ACP steps that we use sometimes in talking to doctors. So if you look at the upper left-hand corner, it says all adults should complete an advanced directive. Okay? The one of choice, we would say, would be the healthcare power of attorney. So that's for everybody. That's the 100% that y'all shouted out a few minutes ago. Then you'd update those things, and then things do turn on a new intensity when you're diagnosed with something serious. Perhaps you've gotten cancer. Perhaps it can't be treated in the way that you would want it. That's certainly a time to rethink the plan, because it may not be curative anymore. It may be what we have called palliative in that environment, okay? And many of y'all have had those experiences with loved ones. And then I won't mention post anymore at this time, so next slide. Yeah, so this, I'm going to end with just a picture there of my family again. This, I don't know if you can tell. Can you tell what we're standing in? Phone booth, man. You say, some of y'all are old, aren't you? They didn't have those anymore? Yeah, so this is in downtown Brevard, North Carolina. It's one of our favorite places to go about right now, whenever it's 115 heat index. But we try to get there June or July once a year. And this is downtown, right from O.B. Taylor's toy store. And we got the whole family in there. Yeah, that's been 2-3 years ago, so I'm not sure. We'll have to try it again this year and see if we can fit in there. But that's the crew I think about most all the time. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Pretty sure I have the healthcare power of attorney, but is it necessary to have a healthcare power of attorney if you have the power of attorney and living will?
All right, so there are 2 powers of attorney in South Carolina. There's a healthcare power and a financial. All right, so are you sure you have the healthcare power?
Full power of attorney, which I guess maybe they're right both.
And I don't know that language. If it's, now there are persons, I have had patients who name the same person as both. I've also been advised that you may not want that. I've had crazy situations in practice whenever they've been both. But at the same time, you do the best you can. Yes, ma'am.
With these sorts of prescription type things, I notice that sometimes people end up in nursing homes or whatever, and they continue to get all these medications to extend their life. Does this allow for someone like myself to say, I don't want that, once I get to that point, I don't want it, just let me have my natural?
Yes, and you should have that freedom now. Because you are clearly, I would say, just looking around the room, You're a robust group of people. I don't think anybody in this room necessarily would be eligible for an end-of-life care document such as post, but all of you would be eligible for the healthcare power of attorney, and I encourage you to do it. But you would have, if you're within your own capacity to make that decision and I'm medically competent, those sorts of things, you'd have that ability now. But I agree with you. A lot of medicine is given, both in the outpatient setting, inpatient, and assisted and skilled nursing facility settings that are unnecessary.
Well, I'm thinking about planning ahead to say if I get to the point where I'm either medically or psychologically unable to make that decision, can I address that now?
No question, yes. And you would do that through the advanced directives.
Okay.
And the healthcare, most people think you have to have a living will and a healthcare power to do that. The healthcare power has a section on it, okay? It has a section on it that allows you to write in those things. And so when your healthcare power is named, perhaps as a sister or brother or spouse, that person looks at that and says, well, you know, Jane didn't want that. We're not going to do it. Very helpful. Yeah, good question. Yes.
I want to thank you for being here, and I wanted to just bring up something that you didn't touch on. My mom passed away at 48 2 years ago, and she did have a healthcare power of attorney that named me, but it also named her ex-husband, and it hadn't been updated. And so please, when you have these, check them whenever you have a life event, because I had to fight with someone that I hadn't talked to in 10 years, and it took a month to get my mom off of life support and buried, and she never wanted to be on life support. So please do that for your family, because it was traumatic for me to have to do that. Thank you.
And there was one other. It says, do we have any others?
All right, that's really good information. Enjoyed that. And yes, of course, make sure that you review your documents when big things happen in your life. So, yes, Wayne?
Are we meeting on July 4th week?
We are not. No, we're not meeting that Monday. And next week is transition week. So I will ring the bell and Stephen will close it. So I hope that everybody will be here, and we have a lot of interesting things planned, sort of. Yes, so it'll be a good day. So we're going to go ahead and end with song.